Good afternoon and welcome to Government House. My name is Hugh Borroman. I have the honour to be the Official Secretary to Her Excellency the Governor, and I'll be the Master of Ceremonies this afternoon. I'll now ask you please to be upstanding for the arrival of the official party and to remain standing for the playing of the Viceregal salute. The official party today is the Honourable Stephen Patterson, MP, representing the Premier of South Australia, Dr Susan Close, MP, representing the Leader of the Opposition, Lieutenant Commander Benjamin Robertson, representing the Commanding Officer, Navy Headquarters, South Australia, Colonel Jake Kersley, representing the Army Area Representative, South Australia, Group Captain James Blagg, representing the Senior Australian Defence Force Officer, Edinburgh, and Assistant Commissioner Scott Duval, representing the Commissioner of Police. It's now my privilege to introduce Her Excellency the Governor of South Australia, the Honourable Francis Adamson AC, and Mr Rod Bunton.
Please be seated, everyone. Gana Fokana Island, Gana Nian Island, Achamina Island, Matana Yakananku. I acknowledge that we are meeting today on the traditional lands of the Kaurna people, and I pay my respects to the elders. It's Rod's and my great pleasure to be welcoming you here for a very important investiture ceremony at Government House. We know that some of you will have been here before. For one of you, clearly, I would expect it is the very first time, and there may be others who are also here for the first time. Let me welcome back particularly, though, the Minister for Trade and Investment, representing the Premier, the Deputy Leader of the Opposition, representing the Leader of the Opposition, the Service Chiefs and their representatives. Today is an important day in the life of the state. This is an important occasion for you all. I just want to speak very briefly to the recipients of awards at the back there. I really hope that you will feel as comfortable today as you have been every day, given the service that we are acknowledging today. To the people who are most important in your lives, your loved ones, your strongest supporters. Let me say also that at least one of the stories today will be very familiar to you. You know it intimately. But in the course of the ceremony, you will come to hear about other outstanding achievements, service that is well beyond the norm, achievements that are exceptional. And there is something extraordinary about all of that when you add it together. It's also extraordinary because typically the recipients of these awards are very unassuming about them. In fact, some of them are so unassuming that when they receive emails advising them of the awards, they don't believe that they can be real and they delete them. This has happened to recipients at least twice this week. Recipients who carefully checked the matter with their spouse. Their spouse has also advised that it can't possibly be true, and it's been consigned to the delete bin. So let me thank you all for reading your email and for believing it and for joining us today. The final point I'd like to make is that you are only here as recipients because someone saw your outstanding service, someone recognised your exceptional achievements, and someone wanted you to be recognised in Australia's national honour system, the Order of Australia. So I ask you please, when you leave today, very happy I'm sure, but to please bear in mind, I'd like you to be spotters for the next group of people to come through, for you to speak to your friends and work colleagues about how it is that someone's nominated, because there are many more outstanding Australians, many of them here in South Australia, whose service is worthy of recognition. Over to you, Official Secretary.
Your Excellency, the following appointments to Member of the Order of Australia in the General Division have been made. Professor Margaret Susan Brock is recognised for significant service to tertiary education and to Indigenous history. Professor Brock is a respected leader in colonial, Indigenous and mission history. With a particular interest in Australian Aboriginal women, her work has also encompassed colonial and Indigenous history of the Pacific and parts of Canada and Africa. In 1982, she was the first historian to be appointed to the Aboriginal Heritage Branch of the then Department of Environment and Planning. An author of several highly influential publications and essay collections, her research has frequently been cited in native title claims in South Australia. From 1990 to 2010, she taught at Edith Cowan University, where she is an emeritus professor. Professor Brock also contributed to the historical background to the South Australian report of the Royal Commission into Aboriginal Deaths in Custody. She has been a visiting fellow at the University of Basel in Switzerland, as well as the Institute of Commonwealth Studies at London University. Professor Brock's work continues to be cited in national and international debates about Indigenous policy. Professor Margaret Susan Brock. Professor Nigel Ronald Jones is recognised for significant service to neurosurgical medicine and to medical societies. Professor Jones is a neurosurgeon and expert in pain medicine who consults at the Adelaide Spine and Brain Centre. He has dedicated his professional career to excellence in spinal surgery, as well as the treatment of brain tumours and trigeminal neuralgia, a painful neurological condition of the face. Professor Jones is a graduate of the University of Adelaide Medical School and Oxford University, where he completed his doctorate in research on malignant brain tumours and undertook an orthopaedic spine fellowship. In 1992, he was made inaugural Professor of Neurosurgery at the University of Adelaide and Royal Adelaide Hospital, roles he undertook with distinction until 2005. Since then, he has maintained a role as Honorary Clinical Professor of Neurosurgery with the university. Professor Jones was the inaugural chair of the Neurosurgical Research Foundation and spent many years on the executive of the Spine Society of Australia, including a term as president. He is also a former editorial board member of the Journal of Clinical Neuroscience. Professor Nigel Ronald Jones. Dr. Patrick John Phillips is recognised for significant service to medicine and to diabetes organisations. Dr. Phillips is a general endocrinologist with a special interest in diabetes, thyroid and bone disorders. He is highly regarded for his contribution to educating general practitioners about diabetes, a complex condition presenting doctors with many diagnostic and treatment challenges. He has served as the Senior Director of Endocrinology at the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, overseeing the Diabetes Centre of the hospital and the State Diabetes Outreach Programme. Dr. Phillips has generously provided his expertise to several organisations such as Diabetes Australia, the Australian Diabetes Society and the Australian Diabetes Educators Association. With a commitment to ensuring access to information, he was also an editor of the Australian Guidelines for the Management of Diabetes in General Practice and editor of the Diabetes Australia national magazine, Conquest. Dr. Patrick John Phillips. Emeritus Professor James Tully is recognised for significant service to tertiary medical education, notably to gastroenterology. Emeritus Professor Tully has dedicated much of his life and career to tertiary medical education as a surgeon, department head and mentor. He rose through the academic ranks at Flinders University, becoming Emeritus Professor of Surgery in 2012. He has supervised more than 40 PhD or higher degree scholars in surgery. Emeritus Professor Tully is a world-leading gastroenterologist and has been a committee member and position holder for several international professional bodies. He is a past president of the World Gastroenterological Organization, the Asia-Pacific Hepatopancreatobiliary Association, the International Hepatopancreatobiliary Association, the Gastroenterological Society of Australia, and the Australasian Pancreatic Club. In 1992, Emeritus Professor Tully developed the South Australian Liver Transplant Unit at Flinders Medical Centre, where he also introduced the endoscopic method for the diagnosis of biliary diseases. He has a keen interest in research ethics and is chairman, Committee B, of the Bellbury Human Research Ethics Committee in Adelaide. He has also served as Deputy Chair of the Flinders Research Foundation. Emeritus Professor James Tully. Your Excellency, the Medal of the Order of Australia in the General Division has been awarded to the following recipients. Mrs. Wendy Joan Barrett is recognised for service to music. As a music teacher, Mrs. Barrett had a love of her craft, a joy for learning, and the ability to help students maximise their potential. She taught at Fulham North, Fulham Gardens, and Lockleys primary schools during her career. She not only trained choirs, but also made costumes and sets for school productions. Over the years, several of her students were inspired to seek a tertiary education and a career path in music. An enthusiastic supporter of the Adelaide Eisteddfod Society, including office holder, she was made a life member in 2006 for her contribution, including the enormous behind-the-scenes efforts in staging the competitions. Mrs. Barrett is also recognised for her volunteer work with the Adelaide Harmony Choir and the Adelaide West Uniting Church. Mrs. Wendy Joan Barrett. Mrs. Elizabeth Ann Creek is recognised for service to the beef cattle industry. Mrs. Creek is a highly respected industry leader who has been an inspiration to many women in agriculture. She has dedicated her professional life to the development of the Angus breed in Australia, both as manager of the Basin Angus Stud before joining Hillcrest Pastoral Company management team, where she remains an active staff member. She was the first woman to hold the position of President of the Angus Australia Board, serving as a board member for 9 years, making significant contributions to committees focused on marketing and communications, breed development, strategic projects, and risk management. Since retiring, she has continued to contribute as a member of the World Angus Forum Organising Committee. Also active at the state level of Angus Australia, she has assisted with the conduct of the Angus cattle judging at the Royal Adelaide Show. Mrs. Elizabeth Ann Creek. Yep. Mr. Neville James Gilbertson is recognised for service to the community of Mount Gambier. Mr. Gilbertson has had the Mount Gambier community firmly in his heart, devoting countless hours to several committees and service groups. He is a founder and inaugural president of the Ryder Cheshire Homes Foundation in Mount Gambier, which supports a purpose-built facility for people living with physical and intellectual disabilities. Mr. Gilbertson is also recognised for his commitment to the Rotary Club of Mount Gambier West, where he has been a member for 40 years. He is a past president and was named a Paul Harris Fellow for exceptional service. To encourage knowledge and understanding between people from other nations, Mr. Gilbertson is a member of the local Friendship Force of Mount Gambier, the second club to be formed in South Australia. Mr. Gilbertson's family say they are very proud of his contributions, which do so much for the local community. Mr. Neville James Gilbertson. Mr. Sam Craig Johnson is recognised for service to local government and to the community. In 2013, at just 27 years old, Mr. Johnson was elected Mayor of Port Augusta, taking over from long-term incumbent and much-loved local legend Joy Bullock, who died while in office. With his tenure as mayor overshadowed by the closure of the local power station in 2016, Mr. Johnson supported his community through a very trying time. He is a fourth-generation resident of Port Augusta and a strong advocate for the Upper Spencer Gulf region and regional development in general. Mr. Johnson has held a number of board positions and has chaired both the Spencer Gulf Cities Local Government Association and the Upper Spencer Gulf Common Purpose Group. In 2018, he lost the election to retain his position as mayor and went back to university to study public administration. He is now the Mount Remarkable District Council Chief Executive Officer, making him the youngest CEO in South Australia. Mr. Sam Craig Johnson. Mr. Keith Mayfield Lovelock is recognised for service to the community through emergency response organisations. For more than 30 years, Mr. Lovelock has been volunteering with the South Australian Ambulance Service Minnerton branch. In that time, his commitment and service to the Yorke Peninsula region has been recognised with various awards, including the 2019 Yorke Peninsula Council Citizen of the Year and the 2018 Australia Day Citizen of the Year. In 2011, Mr. Lovelock received a Premier's Certificate of Recognition for Outstanding Volunteer Service, and in 2014, a Premier's Award from the Government of South Australia. His passion for his community goes beyond his time with the ambulance service. He has also been the chairperson of the Minnerton District School Board and a member of the Curramulka Primary School Board. He has also sat on the University of Adelaide Medical Centre's Spencer Gulf Rural School Advisory Committee. Mr. Keith Mayfield Lovelock. The late Mr. John Menzel is recognised for service to horticulture. His award will be accepted by his wife, Anne, on behalf of his family. Mr. Menzel and his wife, Anne, started exhibiting dahlias in 1980 and owned Winky Dahlias in the Riverland. Over the years, he introduced more than 40 varieties with the Winky prefix and won awards for each of them. Mr. Menzel founded the Dahlia Society of Australia and was its president for many years. He was a keen exhibitor and regular speaker at shows and conferences in Australia and the United States. He authored Dahlias in Australia, considered an invaluable reference book, and also edited Tuber Talk, a national publication with articles from experienced growers along with a list of show results. Mr. Menzel received many prestigious awards for his passion, including the Dahl Medal from the Dahlia Society of Australia in 2018 and the American Dahlia Society Silver Medal in 2013. He has also judged dahlias in both South Australia and Victoria. The late Mr. John Menzel. Dr. Kfrancis Thompson is recognised for service to dentistry and to the community. As the former director of the Australian Research Centre for Population Oral Health at the University of Adelaide, Dr. Thompson is an advocate for access and equity in dental health. She has a particular interest in Indigenous health and oral health surveys and promotion. She has written more than 60 scientific papers, several books, book chapters and reports, and in 2007 she was awarded the Australian Dental Journal Award for Best Scientific Paper. Dr. Thompson has held several professional appointments, including Chair of the Central Northern Adelaide Health Services from 2007 to 8. She has also been on the editorial board of the Australian Dental Journal and is a former reviewer of grant projects for the National Health and Medical Research Council. Apart from her leadership roles in dentistry, Dr. Thompson has held senior positions in the Uniting Church in the Australia SA Synod and has been chair of Pembroke School Council. Dr. Kfrancis Thompson. Mr. David Norman Thomas is recognised for service to the community through a range of roles. As a police officer for 42 years, Mr. Thomas was committed to the safety and well-being of his community. He has helped young people through his work with organisations such as the Christmas Party for Special Children, Blue Light South Australia, and the Driver Intervention Program. When he retired from the police force in 2012, he built on this community spirit through increased volunteer work. He has been a member of the Lions Club since 2003, first in Narracourt, then Robe. During that time, he has held several senior positions, including Zone 10 Chairman, District Coordinator of the Global Leadership Team, and District Governor. From 2019 to 2020, he was also District Chairman of the Australian Lions Foundation. Mr. Thomas has also volunteered with the Australian Red Cross as a caller with its Tele-Ready service, a community transport team driver, and with the SA Emergency and Disaster Team. Mr. David Norman Thomas. Dr. Richard Lyle Willing is recognised for service to conservation and the environment. In 1984, Dr. Willing became the foundation chair of the Scientific Exhibition Group, a position he held for 19 years before becoming the group's president in 2003. The not-for-profit group runs expeditions to promote knowledge, understanding and appreciation of the natural environment in South Australia. A keen conservationist and farmer, Dr. Willing has promoted scrub retention and sustainable grazing since the 1970s. He's a member of the Fleurieu Beef Group and a former member of Natural Resource Management at Southern Fleurieu Local Action Plan. In 2019, he won a Premier's Award for Outstanding Volunteer Service. A gastroenterologist by profession, his career included 2 years in the 1950s as a medical officer with the Australian National Antarctic Research Expeditions, Mawson, winning a Polar Award in 1959. He has also been heavily involved in Scouts Australia, becoming a life member in 1979. Dr. Richard Lyle Willing. Your Excellency, that concludes the presentations for this afternoon.